The CEO of Groq, that is Groq, just made a major announcement. They have been acquired for $20 billion. And I'm going to explain the air quotes in a bit, but it is effectively a $20 billion acquisition of Groq, the AI chip maker. And I have a lot of thoughts about this, especially because I'm a Groq investor. I invested about a year and a half ago. I have no inside information. I learned about the acquisition yesterday, just like everybody else on Christmas Eve. Even right now, I still don't know if and when I'm going to actually get paid for my investment. But all that aside, it is a fascinating acquisition and has the potential to really shake up the AI inference and pre-training industry. I think we need to start with who is Jonathan Ross? Because he's not just the CEO of Groq. Jonathan Ross is also the founder of the TPU from Google, the chip that basically made Gemini 3, that put Google inference and pre-training on the map. Jonathan Ross invented it during his time at Google. He is an engineering genius. Then around 2017, he left Google and started Groq. And his intuition is, as AI and machine learning workloads continue to increase, the industry was going to need specialized chips specifically to run those types of workloads. And TPUs are the first wide-scale example of specialized AI chips beating generalized AI chips. And this is seen as what Nvidia is truly scared of. And so that brings us to the difference between an Nvidia GPU and a more specialized chip like a TPU, or in Groq's case, what he calls, or what they call, an LPU. Now, Nvidia chips are known as generalized compute accelerators. They really can handle many different workloads, and they're not specialized to AI workloads. Of course, they happen to be really good at AI workloads, but they work in so many different environments. They work with so many different types of data and workloads, and it's just super easy to build on top of them. Plus, Nvidia has this software library called CUDA. It is the thing that allows developers to give instructions to the GPUs, and it is their moat. It is so easy to use. It is standardized, and it just makes everything really easy to build on top of a GPU. Now, compare that to Groq. Groq is a specialized chip made for inference. It's not even really made for pre-training. It is made for inference. Inference is when you give a language model a prompt, it does a bunch of matrix multiplication and then gives you the answer. And it's just incredibly good and, more importantly, fast at that specific use case. So the trade-off between Nvidia chips, which are generalized, and Groq chips, which are specialized, is typically speed, latency, cost, and specialization. And so now imagine you're Jensen. You sit on top of the most valuable company in the world. You build generalized chips that are good for pre-training, they're good for inference, they're good for reinforcement learning, they're good for fine-tuning, they're basically good at everything. But all of a sudden, you see the future coming quickly, and inference is where the real money's at. And all of a sudden, your chips aren't necessarily as competitive as they could be with specialized chips made for inference, like Groq, like Cerebras. These chips are absolute beasts at delivering answers to users who query them. And so Dev Shah on X wrote up a really nice short post about the difference between GPU and TPU and what Nvidia might have been thinking. Let me read a couple lines from it. First of all, Nvidia paid 3x Groq's September valuation to acquire it. That is just a few months ago. 3 times that amount. Every AI lab was GPU dependent, creating massive concentration risk. Google broke free with TPUs for internal use. That is so incredibly important. The TPU proved it can scale pre-training, it can scale inference, and now Google has reportedly been selling the TPUs to external hyperscalers. So they're not just using the TPUs themselves, they are actually selling it to other companies to serve inference, to serve pre-training. And Nvidia saw the writing on the wall. So all of a sudden we had this specialized chip in the TPU. And remember, Jonathan Ross, CEO of Groq, invented that TPU. And it could do everything. And so Nvidia knew something had to give. As it says here, his LPU architecture targeted inference workload where GPUs are actually over-engineered. This matters because inference is where the real money is long-term. Training is a one-time capex, but inference is recurring OpEx that scales with usage. If Groq proved LPUs could hit competitive price performance on inference, every cloud provider would white label their architecture. Nvidia would get squeezed into just training while losing the annuity stream. In fact, I interviewed Jonathan Ross early in 2024, and here's exactly what he said about training versus inference.
And so you spend your money when you're training the models. You make your money when you're actually doing inference.
And it's super interesting because early on, when I first learned about Groq, they were selling their chips externally, similar to how Nvidia's entire business is. But quickly, they actually transitioned to only selling inference. And there were a few reasons for that. One, it was incredibly costly to set up a TPU server rack. So there were only a handful of companies in the entire world that could actually buy TPUs. And those companies were probably also buying Nvidia. So if you're thinking, okay, there's this upstart, should I buy this unproven chip from this upstart, or should I buy the generalized chip that everybody uses and there's a massive amount of standardized software from Nvidia? Which one would they choose? Well, obviously they chose. So Groq started selling inference directly. They started serving developers through an API, and they did really well. They were able to load up open source models and serve them at incredible speeds. Now back to Jensen. Jensen has said the reason Nvidia is so powerful, the reason they have such an incredible business is because their chips are generalized. They are good for so many different use cases. But now he seems to be admitting that might not be the case in the future, at least their competitive advantage. He is now seeing these companies like Cerebras, like Groq, specialized chips running at a better cost per token, running much faster, much cheaper. And he's also seeing inference as the moneymaker. And he's probably thinking, okay, we need to get into the specialized chip game. And so we have the acquisition of Groq. But it's not actually an acquisition. Let's talk about that for a moment. So let's look at the announcement by Groq. Groq and Nvidia enter non-exclusive inference technology licensing agreement to accelerate AI inference at global scale. And a little bit about the specifics. Groq announced it has entered into a non-exclusive licensing agreement with Nvidia for Groq's inference technology. As part of this agreement, Jonathan Ross, Groq's founder, Sunny Madra, who we just had on the live show, Groq's president, and other members of the Groq team will join Nvidia to help advance and scale the licensed technology. Groq will continue to operate as an independent company with Simon Edwards stepping into the role of Chief Executive Officer. Groq Cloud will continue to operate without interruption. Now, this is reminiscent of two recent acquisitions and seemingly the trend in Silicon Valley. First, Scale AI. Meta bought Scale AI, took all of the leadership and brought them to Meta, took all of the IP, all of the data, brought it to Meta to help train their future models, but Scale AI still lived. It was a shell of a company, but what they didn't do was acquire it. And this was to get around potential antitrust violations. The same way that Meta acquired Scale for billions and billions of dollars without exposing themselves to antitrust regulation, this is the same thing. Nvidia bought the IP. It's non-exclusive, but let's be honest, nobody else is really going to be buying this technology. And they got all of the top engineers and all of the top leadership to join Nvidia. This also happened with Windsurf. Google bought Windsurf. The top team at Windsurf joined Google. They got all of the IP, but much of the team remained at Windsurf, and Windsurf remained a company, but it was a shell of a company until Cognition, the company behind Devin, just a couple days later, bought Windsurf. So it's wild to see how these Aqua licensing deals come through, but it's really just to avoid any kind of antitrust issues. So what is this actually going to mean for the industry? Well, Nvidia is hedging against the future. They see GPUs, generalized AI chips, for pre-training, and they see more specialized chips like Groq for inference. Now, if you look at the TPU is being used for pre-training, RL, it is used for fine-tuning, it is used for inference. So there is a world in which these specialized chips are actually good at everything. And remember, Groq has been using chip technology that is a decade plus old. That was another reason they were so powerful, because they were using old, I believe, 14 nanometer technology. We have 2 nanometer technology right now, and they were able to run at incredible speeds. So they had low cost hardware serving inference at insane speeds. And so again, Nvidia now has admitted these specialized chips have a place in the world, and they have staked their claim on Groq. They have also all but admitted the real money is in inference, not in pre-training. Pre-training happens once, inference happens over and over again and scales with usage. Buying Groq is both defensive against Google, and offensive to get ahead of this trend and serve inference at the fastest speeds possible, and really just have more of a variety of the chips you're selling. Now, it's going to be interesting because right now, Groq only serves inference. They do not sell their chips. Nvidia only sells their chips. They don't serve inference. So these two companies are going to come together, and most likely what's going to happen is Nvidia is going to sell Groq's chips. They are going to sell it to their existing customers, and they're going to do a package play. Buy Nvidia chips, buy Groq chips, get the best of both worlds, and it's going to be interesting to see how they put these packages together. Lastly, CUDA, the software that makes NVIDIA chips work, makes it really easy to use, they're going to need to extend that software to also include Groq's chips. Now, all of a sudden, you have one software running multiple types of chips, just super easy. Developers can build on top of it. It is just a beautiful symbiotic relationship. So that's it. I wanted to record a quick Christmas video. Merry Christmas to everybody. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.